Hi, this is Rachel Pulling, and I chose to analyze Stone Fox by John Reynolds Gardner, illustrated by Marcia Sewall. So the first thing I looked at was the title of the book called Stone Fox. This had me making predictions. I looked at the title of the book and I wondered, what will this book be about? And will this be an actual fox? Will it be a gray fox? When I hear the word stone, I think of color and it could be a gray fox. I think about the term stone cold fox, which means someone who is attractive. Now, based on um, the front cover, I think it might be a chapter book, a children's book. So there's illustrations. I don't think it will be about that. So I'm making inferences, I'm making predictions when I first see this title. Then I look at this picture here and I see it's a boy. And I'm synthesizing all this new information, taking it in from the picture. I don't see a fox, so I wonder, who is this stone fox? Is that meaning the dog, or is that the boy? And I wonder, I'm making predictions that the boy and the fox could be friends even, because I think about body language, and when you're facing someone like that, when your belly button is pointing to someone, even if it's an animal, it means you like them or you're making connections with them. So they must have a strong bond. So I'm making predictions about that. I'm also making predictions that they're on a farm and that this might be in an older time based on the farmhouse that I see with the old porch and just the way that the house is constructed. So I'm making predictions about the time period and I'm making predictions about the setting, that it will be on a farm or out in the country somewhere. I love those big old trees. Moving on to chapter 1. It's on page 3. It's called The Grandfather. Here again, I'm making predictions. Seeing the title, Grandfather, it makes me think maybe that boy from the picture, so I'm thinking back to what I have learned, the boy from the picture must have a grandfather, is what I'm predicting. I think about the term grandfather. That's not a term that we hear people use a lot today with their grandpas. I call my grandpa grandpa, my friends call their grandpas grandpa. So I kind of think, based on that picture I saw, and based on the word grandfather, this may be older. So I'm making those predictions once again. Now, I'm synthesizing new information once I start reading this chapter on page 3. I learn that the boy's name is Willie, and I'm confirmed they live on a farm, and in fact it's a potato farm in Wyoming, so I picture that lots of land and open space and maybe some rolling hills. I've only driven through Wyoming once, so I'm making connections back to things happening in my past. So I'm seeing those rolling hills from the picture, and it is in fact a potato farm. And I also see that Willie and his grandfather live on a potato farm together, so I'm synthesizing that new information. Now I move on to page 4. This is page 4. Here I adjusted my reading pace. I noticed myself slowing down so I could really focus what was happening on this page. This may have been because I was concerned for Willie. I was trying to understand what happened. It seemed like an emergency. And then I analyzed the text based on what I read. I found myself rereading this page just to make sure I got everything out of it. And when I reread it, I analyzed that text and I saw that the author uses a lot of suspense with these ellipses here. That is, until this morning. And also how he talks about his patterns and his routine with his grandfather and how they have changed. So then I'm thinking critically. I'm thinking, okay, so something's going on with Willie's grandfather. Now, where are his parents? My thoughts are wondering, what will Willie do without his grandfather? Where are his parents? So I'm having those critical thinking moments. Looking at page 5, the first sentence. A dog was sleeping on the front porch. So, is this the stone fox? This is the dog that's coming into play here. So, I'm wondering about the dog. Looking at the paragraph there, I'm synthesizing new information again. A lot of new information coming my way, especially at the beginning of this chapter. So I had to determine importance, which is from our McGregor book on page 2, because there was a lot of new information. So I see the dog, his name is Searchlight. He's a big black dog, or she, excuse me, so it's a female. She had a spot on her forehead. She was old. Then I see she was born on the same day as Willie. And this makes me think, is this significant? Do they have a really strong bond because they were born on the same day? So I'm synthesizing all this new information, and according to McGregor, I'm determining this importance of all this new information. So I'm thinking back to the title. I'm making those connections with the title. Is this the stone fox? Because we're learning about the dog. Continuing on page 5, these next few paragraphs, once again, there's a new character introduced, so I'm getting more information and I'm analyzing this information. I saw that Doc Smith is a doctor and she's a female, so it made me think of the time period. Okay, when were the first doctors introduced? And actually, I had to go look it up because I wasn't sure at what time period would there be female doctors introduced. So I'm questioning and I'm analyzing this new information that's coming at me, but I'm also thinking critically about the time period that this would be at. Here we have another one of those great illustrations, and that's the first thing I looked at on page 6. Now, I see that Dr. Smith looks old, and she's described like she was on page 5. She's reading, and she appears to be sitting outside, so I'm gathering information from this picture. Then I'm also making predictions. Something I noticed was the way Willie and Searchlight were running. I see Searchlight is running in front of Willie. He's leading the way, and then I thought about his name, Searchlight. Is he kind of the guiding light for Willie? Is he leading the way? Is he helping Willie search? So I'm making predictions. Is he going to help Willie find something in the future? Page 6, I analyze the text. Doc Smith says Grandpa isn't answering because it might be a trick. I think that Grandpa must be this funny guy in town, and so Doc Smith is really thinking, okay, is this a joke? You know, she hasn't seen Grandpa yet, she hasn't seen Grandfather yet, and she doesn't know, is he joking about this? And then I noticed I'm analyzing some grammar, and then I'm also making connections to my past. I notice Willie says things like real early, and I think about the grammar that he uses, and it makes me make a connection to my past of the Andy Griffith Show, and I think he's kind of like Odie, the boy from the Andy Griffith Show. So I'm visualizing this old black and white picture in my head and this time period of Andy Griffith. So that gives me a little bit more imagery for the story. Moving on to page 7, I analyze the text. The doctor uses the term hitch up, and I'm going to assume this means a horse. And then it also makes me think, okay, she wants to get to Grandpa in a hurry. She assumes that there is something wrong. Moving on page 7, I'm using context clues. I do not have any background knowledge on horses, but they talk about a Palomino horse, and I'm going to assume this is the type of horse based on the words around it. Then I'm synthesizing new information again. The dog is leading the way. Again, on page 7, just like in the picture, he's that searchlight. He's the light ahead of Willie. Making connections. So I'm thinking again, why is the dog's name Searchlight? Are we going to find out? Okay, moving on to page 9. There's a great picture here where, once again, I see Searchlight in the front. So I'm making inferences in this picture. I see that, excuse me, I'm making predictions, seeing that Searchlight is the first one to get to Grandfather again. And I wonder how he will continue to be their guiding light. Page 9, I'm thinking critically. The doctor seems very, very straightforward in her words, and her tone seems harsh. She seems stressed, and I think she's worried about grandfather. The end of page 9. Once again, I'm making inferences. She almost seems reflective at this point. So she doesn't rush to help grandfather, but she seems to know what's going on. So I'm wondering, is grandfather okay? Is he resting or is he alive? And she doesn't rush to fix anything. So then I'm like, okay, he must have died. And she continues to ask Willie questions about the crop and money, just making sure that everything is set in place for Willie makes me predict that grandfather has died. Um, I'm thinking critically, the tone in little Willie's voice, I'm analyzing that text there. The tone seems frantic as Doc Smith asks him questions. Nearing the end of the chapter on page 10, I'm synthesizing new information all the way at the end of the chapter. The first lines on this page confuse me when she says there's nothing wrong with him. I don't understand why she says grandfather is healthy. And honestly, I didn't have any predictions. I was just confused at this point. Then I adjusted my reading pace to help with that confusion, to help me understand more. She says Doc Smith took a deep breath. I actually found myself taking a deep breath too. And this actually helped me slow down my reading so I could take in all of that information. On page 11, I'm making predictions. Little Willie is determined to help grandfather. And when he says this, Searchlight barks. It makes me predict, once again, that Searchlight is going to help lead that way for them. This is the end of my Think Aloud by Rachel Pulling.